Before I kick the video off right quick, guys, just a heads up on the history content. I'm gonna be putting that stuff hopefully on Spotify. I'm working on getting the Spotify channel monetized right now and possibly purchasing a Spotify channel from somebody else because they send you a ad to put on your podcast or on your videos, and that will be video content, by the way. Spotify, you guys now, is not only audio. It'll be the same as it would be on YouTube with a video and everything. So hopefully I'll be able to get that monetized or purchase the other guy's channel pretty soon. And then I'll be uploading all the Chicago history content to that. And the day-to-day news will be on YouTube. I eventually want to go to all Spotify, but that's probably not going to be for a while because I know some of the people overseas can't view that. But anyways, getting on to the story, man. So if there's one incident, and every now and then we see incidents like this where I could say that it encapsulates almost in its entirety what gangbanging is in Chicago. It would be something like this, man. We have a incident where somebody was just recently convicted, a Latin Count gang member. This is over in the northwestern section of Indiana, which, as far as like a metropolitan area, is really all part of the east side of Chicago. The border is literally right there, so I include Northwest Indiana sometimes even like in the Chicago street scene. And the Latin Counts, they've been into it with the Latin Kings, and some guys had spotted a king's funeral and somebody at the funeral that they wanted to get, and some stuff unfolded in the ensuing moments that resulted in the death not of any kings, not of any counts, but of Neutrons. And this is highly typical for what goes on. We just saw a young boy shot the other day over on the southwest side while walking. We just saw a 3-year-old girl shot. We just saw, I believe it was an 8-year-old shot, 10-year-old. We've had 20 minors shot in Chicago in the past week, not to mention all the innocent civilians that have been killed. In this particular incident, we had a guy from out of town who didn't even have anything to do with what was going on over there. And then we also had a 16-year-old girl killed. So the victim's mother, in this case, is saying the guilty verdict for the gang members gives her some sort of justice, even 7 years after the two were fatally shot. Now, this took place back in 2015, so it took a jury 5 hours to find a Latin Counts gang member whose name was Eduardo guilty of the murders of a girl named Lauren and a guy named Christopher. Now, here's the thing that all gang members need to pay attention to. Eduardo was not the trigger man. He did not pull the trigger. He was just there with the guys who did. He still went down for the murder, and this is what you need to remember, okay? Some guys may be under the impression that if you're not the person who actually does the hit, okay, a lot of times on social media we see guys like talking about, well, this guy has this many bodies or this guy has that many bodies, and I'm mostly responsible for starting that messed up trend of, naming bodies and stuff. But we see guys like doing that, like ascribing a certain number of bodies to this person and that person. The feds don't see it the way people on social media see it. On social media, only the guy who pulled the trigger gets the score. The feds see it so that anybody who was there with him, collaborating with him, could have been the driver, could have just been somebody who, pointed out where the guys were at. Anybody in any way participating in this, you get that body too. And when the feds give you that body, you're going down too. So this is what this situation was for this guy. And he looked absolutely stunned in the courtroom when they gave this guilty verdict. He was dressed in a yellow button-down and a black tie. And his head was hanging down. His family watched as the jury unanimously answered guilty. And he had a daughter who was there in the courtroom. And the family declined to comment. Outside the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Hammond, the mother of one of the victims shouted her relief and gratitude to God as her son and her family and friends smiled. She said, "Thank you, God. My God told me that it would end like this, and I'm listening to my God. We had an argument that if I stopped being mad at him, he would do this for Lauren, and so I'm not ashamed." That was according to the mom. So she said it's been a long, torturous 7 years waiting for something to happen. He said, "I want to thank the city of Hammond, the Hammond Police Department, the jury, and the community for not letting go of Lauren's memory. I'm so grateful to the U.S. Assistant Attorneys. Now, the other victim was a guy. He had had part of his skull removed to relieve the pressure on his brain. And they said that he was so paralyzed that he could only move his right arm, and they couldn't remove all the bullet fragments from his chest. And he would just lie there and ask the question, why did they do this to me? So his sister said, it's just so sad everywhere, but my brother has justice now. So Eduardo and the other gang members were driving through downtown Hammond, Indiana on the afternoon of June 29th, 2015, when they spotted a vigil for a member of their rival gang, the Latin Kings, and this was the particular set known as the Little Waco Latin Kings. So this was over in the 5500 block of Beale Avenue. So Eduardo, along with the others, decided that they would shoot at the wake because there was a king in the crowd who allegedly had shot, I guess, one of their dads. Okay, so the dad of somebody who was affiliated with them. Now, this is according to testimony that came out during the 7-day trial. So after the plan was hatched, two of the members, one of them whose street name was Bola, and another one whose street name was Trouble, drove to the neighborhood where Trouble then fired into the crowd with a .223 rifle from the railroad tracks along Fayette Street. So the victim, Christopher, he was visiting from out of town on Beale Avenue. He was visiting a relative. And Lauren, the 16-year-old girl, was hanging out on her family's porch with other neighborhood kids, apparently some of whom were younger children. And she and Christopher got caught in the crossfire. She died almost immediately after being shot. She was 16 years old. Beale Avenue in Hammond has been renamed in honor of Lauren. So anyways, the other Latin counts, a guy whose street name was Shadow and a guy whose street name was Homicide, ended up as co-defendants in a RICO case that included the murders of Lauren and Christopher. And they await their sentencing. That should have happened by the time that I dropped this video. They were pleading guilty to racketeering conspiracy and 2 counts of murder for racketeering purposes. And the other 2 admitted their involvement and responsibility for their deaths, pleading guilty to conspiracy. That guy Trouble was actually killed in a burglary back in December of 2015. So he couldn't be sentenced. So this is according to News of Canada. Shout out them for reporting the story, and several other news outlets had reported it as well. So some of this was their wording, but it just goes to show you, man, how neutrons are constantly getting caught in the crossfire here in Chicago, man. There were no ops hit, none. It was only neutrons, and there were neutrons in the vicinity. And this is why I say there's a couple of things here. So for everybody that is a neutron, and by the way, for people that are new to my channel or new to any of this, neutron is just a slang term for somebody that doesn't gangbang. Okay, now just as a side note, if somebody ever asks you if you do gangbang, and if you're like a young guy, you know, from the demographic that you know, has a lot of gang members in it, I wouldn't use that word. I wouldn't say like I'm a neutron, because typically only gang members use that word. I should probably stop using it myself, because, you know, people get used to saying that and then they say it. Like, that's typically a word that's only used in like gang circles. I wouldn't say I don't gangbang either. And like I said, I definitely wouldn't say I'm a neutron, because a lot of times when guys do say stuff like that, they think that they're lying, and then they just shoot them anyways. And you definitely don't want to try to guess what gang those guys are in and try to say that you're in that same gang. That's definitely not a good idea. But at any rate, so you can see how if you are in that situation, though, if you're a person that doesn't gangbang and you're near a wake or a vigil or a funeral for gang members, you want to get someplace else really fast. Any place where large numbers of gang members are congregating, parties, house parties, vigils, wakes, funerals, these things get shot up like on a regular basis. We just had another funeral shot up, you know, over the weekend. And I don't know if that was gang related, but I'm just saying, like, these things you are like, you know, violence magnets. So definitely don't be anywhere in the vicinity of that. When you see those block lightings where they're putting the candles out on the block and everybody's got the balloons and they're saying long live so-and-so, you get as far away from that as you possibly can get. I can't even count the number of times those things have been shot up. So I don't know if they knew that. I don't know if they saw them there. But at any rate, as far as the gang members, you heard what they said. They were using a rifle. Now, a lot of these guys, when it comes to the rifles, when it comes to the Glocks with the drum mags and the switches, these things have absolutely no aim whatsoever. Okay? None. I mean, you hear all the time in Chicago, man. Houses are shot up 10 times and like no ops are in the house. You hear about guys having these shootouts on the street and like no bullets are hitting any gang members. They're all hitting the houses, kids. So this is gangbanging in Chicago summed up right now. And it's been this way for a while. But I remember in the 90s, there was a kid hit by Cabrini Green. And the gangs, at least the black gangs, they had called like a citywide truce after that happened. This is back when there were actual leaders. And the violence was reduced dramatically after that kid was hit. It was like that back then. Like if a kid was hit, they would make you turn yourself in. That was like a big deal back then. Today, these kids, these guys, these gang members are doing that left and right. So, yeah, we can't wait for them to stop. Everybody got to be, far away from them as you can possibly get. If you've got gang members staying in the house, just know that, that's dangerous for any kid that could be in the house. I had done a report on I think he was 10. He had been paralyzed. This was, again, over on the east side of Chicago. Permanently paralyzed because a bullet just came through the window of the downstairs of his home and hit him in the back. And he'll never walk again. Okay, at 10 years old. He was a football player, the whole bit. So, yeah, man, rest in peace to Lauren and Christopher. And for all you kids thinking about signing up to gangbang, remember, you're signing up to kill innocent people, basically. I mean, and this is what it is. Even if you personally don't do it, you're going to be around guys that do that. They're high off lean, they're high off pills. They're like completely out of their bodies, and then they're just, out there with a gun that has no aim and shooting everything in sight. I mean, that's typically how it goes. I mean, we got to keep it 100. Your boy Winnie C. Report. I'm out.